Now, in a swift reaction, the People's Democratic Party has condemned President Bola Tinubu's 2026 budget, describing it as a budget of consolidated, renewed sufferings that continues to impose economic hardships on Nigerians while enriching the governing class. Now, in a statement on Friday, the PDP National Publicity Secretary, Ini Emeobong, stated that despite assertions of economic growth and stability, the budget falls short in addressing widespread poverty, rising living costs, and insecurity, highlighting the administration's failure to translate fiscal policies into tangible benefits for Nigerians. The PDP also alleged that Nigerians have endured significant economic hardships under the current administration. The opposition party also called for transparent and effective use of security funds to provide modern equipment, sufficient ammunition, better intelligence, and improved welfare for personnel facing well-armed criminal groups. For in-depth analysis on this, I'm joined by a financial expert, Segun Sopitan. He joins me virtually. Mr. Sopitan, many thanks for joining me. I mean, let's just help us understand the full financial implications of the overlapping budget cycles. Let's start there. Because how do concurrent budgets affect cash flow management and project implementation and just overall accountability?
Yeah, look, this is one of the biggest problems that we currently have with our budgeting process as a country. The fact that for some reason this administration doesn't seem to give enough importance the efficiency of the budget process. And since 2023, actually since the exit of the former president, now late Muhammad Buhari, we've regressed, gone back to situations where budgets are not approved until very late into the budget year itself. And, to answer your question, it throws a lot of spanners in the works from a planning point of view, from a policy-making point of view, both for the private sector and for the public sector. Investment analysis, both for foreign investors and for local investors, become a bit more difficult because people have to guess, bearing in mind that government is the single largest spender, in our economy and in most economies across the world. So the way we have the budgets now running concurrently, we've got the 2025 budget, only 30% of the expenditure component of this year's budget has been executed so far, and 70% has been rolled over into next year. So the question would be, also from an accountability point of view, which budget are we running? So if once the National Assembly passes this budget, are we going to be running the 2026 budget in terms of release of funds, raising of the environment documents from the various ministries and parastatals from the 2026 budget or from the rolled over 2025 budget? And that really is a question that, unfortunately, we may not be able to answer. And then that creates an environment where nobody is sure exactly what is going on and how to relate with how much government is actually spending until when the spend then happens, before you can now say, okay, this is what they actually spent. And from a planning point of view, it's an absolute no-no. It's just not good enough.
I mean, I'm glad you're talking about this, because the president has also described the operation of, multiple budgets as a structural weakness, and quote there directly from him. I mean, what does this mean in accounting or even in public service or public finance terms? And what long-term reforms would we need at this point to fix this concurrent budgets running side by side or parallel to each other?
Yeah, so to answer the second part of your question first, I think that it's not so much of a reform problem, or the answer and the solution is not really about reforms. It's just about the will of the president. The president needs to take this process more seriously, because it starts from him. He is the one that needs to trigger the process by telling his ministries and the ministers, start your budget, make sure the budget is available for approval at the FEC meeting. Give them a deadline, October. I believe that the Fiscal Responsibility Act actually says October. Is it September or October? You must have presented the budget to the National Assembly. So it's not a reform thing. It's just the president just needs to take this more seriously. He doesn't seem to think it's important, And the other part of your question, you know, I think that to resolve this issue, the president must show the will, must realign. If President Buhari did this, it's not so hard. It's just a question of will. Now, from a planning perspective, from an analytics perspective, bear in mind that we're in December. Today is the 28th of December, for goodness sake. We're just 10 days away from the new year, 11 days. Most corporate organizations, large corporates, most investment analysts have already completed their budget process for 2026, which means they have had to act without input from the public sector. And the public sector, you know, is too important a part of the economic process for them to be excluded from the planning process of the economy. So it's a more serious problem than I think that the president realizes, and it may very well have a significant impact on his own objectives of creating, you know, how many trillion naira economy did he say he wanted to do? You know, it's a spanner in the works, and it's just something that has to be addressed and fixed.
Let's take a look at the budget, shall we? It's now basing revenue or the bulk of the financing of this budget on an oil benchmark of $60 per barrel, and also an exchange rate of about 1,512 naira to the dollar. Are these assumptions grounded in current market realities, or are we projecting stability in an already volatile global and even domestic environment? And let's not talk about the volatility when it comes to crude oil or prices of barrels on the international market. Well,
I think, you know, the assumptions for the budget this year are a bit more conservative than what happened last year. Crude oil prices are currently hovering around $60, 55, 56, you know, a bit of volatility as a result of all of the various international headwinds, political upheavals here and there, the wars with Russia and Ukraine, you know, the America, you know, threatening different countries, you know, with all sorts of things, the tariff war, you know, the trade war that President Trump is waging. All of those things are having an impact, you know, on the global economic macro indicators, and that is affecting oil prices. So benchmarking at $60, I think it's fair enough, but we may find ourselves with the short end of the stick should things not play out in our favor. With regards to the exchange rate, we're currently trending at about 1,450. It's been hovering around that number for quite a few months. So benchmarking at 1,005 seems reasonable enough to me. I don't have any problems with that. I think maybe the one assumption that may be problematic is the oil production numbers. Assuming 1.8 million barrels per day of crude oil production, when our reality is about 1.6, that's $200,000 per day. Sorry, 200,000 barrels per day gap can become significant in terms of what happens to a budget that is already running a very heavy deficit of 23 trillion naira. You know, so these assumptions, we have to be careful. I think it's conservative, but I wish that they've been more conservative so that we don't end up increasing our deficit significantly. Let's not forget that in this budget we also have debt financing, debt service obligations, well over 16 trillion naira. You know, that's just doing the numbers very quickly in my head, that's about 20-something% of the entire budget. That's very, very heavy numbers, and therefore we should be careful with how we, you know, make that worse by running very heavy deficits on the budget. So these assumptions can be a bit more conservative, but definitely better than what we saw last year.
Definitely better than what we saw last year. There's also the matter of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, which is already costing us a lot from this year's budget. We wonder what will happen when it spills into next year. I must say thank you for taking our time to join us, Mr. Segun Sopitan, there, just giving us a bit of insight following the presentation of the 2026 Appropriation Bill.